government is a military government which will rule with advice from certain eminent civilians in the country. I would like to emphasize immediately that this coup was not initiated by the armed forces merely to satisfy our selfish ends.
And I said, this is man's inhumanity to man. So to me, because you are talking to me, that was a great justification for the coup of 1972.
That was going to be his last meal. I would have prepared one of his favorite food, which is roasted mashed cocoyam with peanut or groundnut mixed with red palm oil.
Last word, Father, take this ring, pray for me that God may accept me as I am. This was his last word.
The military was his hidden passion, and I think he got it. You see, the philosophers have been saying that there is nothing as powerful as an idea whose time has come. I think the time has come for the world to know the real General Ignatius Kutu.
With him as the general, pressure was still mounting on Acheampong to return to a constitutional rule. By September 1976, the Ghana Bar Association called for the restoration of the constitutional rule in 2 years. By this bold move, it meant the people had lost trust in the military regime. General Acheampong then proposed a unigov system. This proposal to block partisan politics ultimately led to its downfall 2 years later in 1978. This deadline, the Bar Association prophetically gave for its voluntary resignation. Within the next few years in Acheampong's government, there will be several plots and coup attempts against his government. Some of the accused included Clem Sue and his brother, Captain Joel Sue.
If I was going to stage a coup in 75, before 75, I was in Netherlands. Okay. The defense advisor to the Hague came and met me. And he told me, Joel, don't go back to Ghana because they will arrest you. They think you want to stage a coup. And I said to him, my heart is clean. I'm not staging a coup. So I will go back. So I came back. I was followed. I knew all the BNI cars because they were following me all over. And I think they went and told Acheampong that I was plotting a coup. And Acheampong said he didn't believe it because I was a pillar. I mean, I and Bakustan, von Bakustan, who were the people who made him who he was at that time. And I'm not boasting, but I was one of the best regional managers in food distribution. And then Colonel Paul Nkegbe was the minister for Agric. So he got to know that Acheampong said, all right, if you say so who wants to stage a coup, post him to Bolgatanga, then he can stage a coup in Bolgatanga. So they transferred me to Bolgatanga. So Paul Nkegbe, who didn't know the politics that was playing behind, was angry with Acheampong. Said, this is my best regional manager. Why are you sending me to Bolgatanga? So when I was arrested, Acheampong didn't know. So then too late.
Others included renowned literary scholar Kofi Awono, Captains Kojo Chikata, Gustav Banini, and a few more for salvation. A man who never believed in the spilling of blood was now at the point of making a decision to either save his government from coup plotters or to allow nature to decide their fate. Being a spiritual man, he needed to be at peace with himself.
He was spiritual in the sense that he was a Catholic, and he believed. In fact, I can say that he had asked me to start helping him to write his memoirs. We started, we had a few interviews, but with the events that overtook us, I lost the scripts. But he believed that every man is made of body, soul, and spirit, and that the body, the soul, has to be fed by the spiritual environment or the spiritual impetus that you have, so that the soul, the two would then sit in judgment over the body to make the body do what they want to do. Otherwise, if you give the opportunity to the body, the body can mess you up. So he read a lot about that. He had various communications with people who believed that the spirit realm was real, and therefore you had to find out as much as possible how you could use the knowledge therefrom to develop yourself to be a better man.
He therefore decided to invite his American spiritualist and confidant Simeon Lowe for spiritual guidance.
There is this Mr. Coleman. It was I who introduced him to Acheampong. For spiritual purposes. In fact, I told Acheampong that you need somebody to help you spiritually and guide you. So if I told Coleman, and then Acheampong would tell the guards, when Coleman arrived, he mentions my name. That was what gave him the permission to go to Acheampong. So it was through Coleman that Acheampong got to know Simeon.
Samuel Lowe was a spiritual advisor who was invited to come from the US to guide him when he was being put under intense pressure by his colleagues on the SMC to execute the coup protest of 1976 or so, including Chikata and others, But he resisted. So once Samuel Lowe came in and engaged him spiritually, he was able to reconcile himself with the decision not to execute them.
A true Christian as he was always guided by the biblical quotations, Romans chapter 12, verse 19 to 20, and Deuteronomy 32 to 35, that vengeance is the Lord's. November 11, 1977, 5 months after their meeting, Simeon Lowe wrote to Acheampong to find out the well-being of his friend. In response, dated 9 December 1977, Acheampong wrote, Dear Brother Simeon, your letter dated Friday 11th November 1977 is hereby acknowledged. This letter is coming your way with joy and prayer that you and your loved one are all in good health and in harmony. How well I recall the night before your departure from Accra on 25th of June 1977. You may rest assured, as head of state of Ghana, sometime in the future, during my administration, with God's grace, I intend to set the men who have tried to assassinate me free, that they may breathe the fresh air and once more they may walk with dignity. May it also be the will of God and my faith that those same men become useful Ghanaians and not to tear the country down, but to help to build it. For hate destroys and love builds. With love, yours sincerely, signed Gen.Acheampong, CSG, Head of State and Chairman of the Supreme Military Council. Some few months later, on 30th March 1978, against the backdrop of the tension-filled campaign, the SMC referendum on union government finally came on. At the end, the union government, yes, won 51% of the majority. The people didn't accept it. Eventually, Gen.Acheampong's era was gradually coming to an end.
You see, if you do the wrong thing at the wrong time, it becomes wrong. You remember from the beginning I told you that we agreed that we were going to call people from all the various political parties to run the affairs of the government. That would have been the right time. You see, if we had been doing that, then we could have developed that into Unigov. And that would have been more acceptable. But Acheampong brought the Unigov at the time that his popularity was waning. And people were becoming against the government. And the sentiments against the government was terrible. And people were even angry with the soldiers. The soldiers were being insulted in the market. They were pouring all sorts of things from them. So you see, the idea came at the wrong time. But if you had come from the beginning and then with a success operation, with Operation Feed Yourself, then it would have catapulted it onto the limelight.
Well, I was in London when I heard that Acheampong was pushing the Unigov idea. And for some reason, everyone kind of thought that he was trying to perpetuate his own power. He was not. He was trying to introduce the country back to a democratic system. But the proper democratic system, the non-partisan democratic system. The Unigov government was merely the original democratic system that was used by the UK. In England, there were no parties, no political parties at all in their democracy. It's the Americans who introduced political parties. And then everybody in the world then jumped on that bandwagon. But Acheampong wanted a non-partisan democratic government where you, and a non-partisan government I think could have been the best for us. The problem with us in Africa, our pretense that we are doing democracy and all that, is a joke because 70% of our people don't know what the hell this is all about. 70% of our people live in the villages. They don't know anything about democracy, they don't know anything about what goes on in Accra, they don't know who is the president, they don't know who is the president, they don't care. They go to their farms every morning and go and take what they want to take, farm what they want to farm, and go home and sleep under the stars or in their little huts. I've seen it all, I've been around all of them. So you can't really tell what people want in this country or in any African country or not. You can't. Democracy doesn't suit us because nobody knows anything about anybody. If you ask a village person why you voted for so, he say, oh, because he's a tall man. What does he know about manifestos? I mean, what does it mean for him? Nothing.
July 5, 1978, 3 months after the referendum, his CDS and friend Frederick Akwofo and his colleagues sprung a surprise on Gen.Acheampong, SMC chairman, who also doubled as Minister of Defense. Acheampong lived at the officers' mess at Arakan Barracks at Bemakam. On that day, upon medical advice, he was resting at his military residence because he had injured his ankle.
They were the best of friends. As to what happened, obviously these things will not have witnesses. I wasn't one of them. He had not been well, so we were told. I hadn't seen him that weekend, but about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, the minister in charge of national security, then called me on the interview. And I'm come over. So I went. I think the chairman had decided to resign. That was what he told me. So we have to put on the statement. He said, and my too known personality. I said, no, it's too crude. Why don't you allow me to call the Sewusi Groupman from the GBC for the outside OB van, outside broadcast van, to come, and then he will make a statement that probably he thinks at the time of that. And then I say, this is the statement. At that time I knew that things have changed.
3 weeks earlier, he had tasked the Military Advisory Council to investigate and report on some corruption cases. Knowing of Acheampong's condition and the doctor's advice, the SMC colleagues lured him with a report of investigations. He was told his attention was urgently needed. Unknown to him, it was going to be his last time as head of state of the Republic. He entered his office in confidence. He didn't know that all the regular bodyguards have been replaced by a contingent of elite soldiers picked from the 48th Field Engineers Regiment. As a result, he didn't check what was really going on around him. At about 8:30 a.m., the door to his office opened. Without notice, Lieutenant General Frederick Ekofo and his CDS entered, followed by Army Commander Major General Odate Walton, then the Navy Commander, then the Air Force Commander, and the Border Guards Commander, all in uniform. At this time, he still had no idea what was going on. He therefore asked, "Is this an invasion?" Nobody laughed. They were looking at him. They didn't salute him, as protocol demanded. And there came the surprise. Walton pulled a small piece of paper and placed it in front of the general to sign. Gen.Acheampong read through and saw that was his resignation. At this time, he knew it was no more a joke. It was a mutiny. Initially, he decided not to sign, but Walton insisted he would sign. Upon realizing he was trapped, he took a deep breath and signed. Without a single shot fired, Acheampong's bodyguards were disarmed and taken prisoners.
About 6 o'clock, the new regime sent a message to one of the ADCs that they wanted to see me in Birmingham. There I knew Ghanaians. I found it difficult to have a driver to drive me there because they knew I had it. So I had to drive. All thoughts flooded in my mind as I drove from the castle towards Birmingham. I got to the gate. I made a sign because I didn't know the antecedents. I didn't know what was I going to be locked up, was I going to be shot as a result of the change. And one day I sat down for a long time, which gave me the comfort that perhaps it was not that bad. If they wanted to do me in, they would give me the honor of breathing my last breath for such a long time. So finally I got in there and the whole set was in there. Animal took this down for 6 o'clock. Meanwhile, it was about 5:45, 6 p.m. for broadcasting that the secretary has been changed. There is a new secretary with immediate effects. Put it out. We'll be here to listen to it. Just mixed feelings. I knew that I wasn't going to die. Then, how do I get this message to the broadcasting house before 6 o'clock? By God's grace, the message went through. Because they knew my voice, because they knew me and the press secretary who had not been changed, they took it as the press statement for the day and used it. That's my story.
Acheampong was detained at the Asha Forts. Later that day, Ghanaians were informed of the palace coup in a test radio announcement. After some few weeks at Asha Fort, he was moved to Akosombo, where he stayed for a couple of months before finally being placed in safe custody at government's guest house in Amajofe in the Volta region. Lieutenant General Fred Akofo becomes the new head of state of SMC2. He accused Gen.Acheampong of many things, according to political historian Obeyaho Asamoah, as listed in the book Life and Times of Ignatius Kutu Acheampong. Some of the allegations included vesting executive power in himself, thus enabling him to ignore collective decisions, sharing favors on favorite military officers, appointing aides and others of doubtful competence, and many more. It is important to note that of all the many allegations against Acheampong, none of the charges pinpointed any particular corruption or misappropriation of funds, as it was popular allegations prior to his overthrow. After some 8 months of isolation at Amajofe, the SMC2 authorized visitations for Acheampong. First was his wife, Faustina, and 2 of his daughters, Elizabeth and Doris. While at detention, there was but one person he was concerned about, his dear father, who reportedly sobbed for days upon hearing of his son's arrest. Gen.Acheampong on 1st May 1979 was shattered when he received word that he had been stripped of all honors conferred on him during his reign as head of state. He was retired from the Ghana Armed Forces and barred from entering into any military installation or establishment. He was no longer to be referred to as general. The instructions was for Acheampong to be banished to his home village of Hwidim from Amajofe. General Acheampong was among the early visitors Acheampong received during his house arrest at Hwidim. This was the only house of Acheampong at his village, Hwidim. June 4, 1979. Against the backdrop of an ongoing trial of Jerry Rawlings, his friends from the Free Africa Movement led a successful coup to overthrow General Akofo and his SMC2 government. Rawlings was indeed rescued from custody to lead the Armed Forces Revolutionary Council, AFRC, which was formed to run the country.
Akofo inherited a bad situation. You see, he could have waited for Acheampong to sort it out or to be overthrown if that was going to be the case. He inherited a very bad situation. The country was in a turmoil. And when he inherited, he was not quick to find a solution by, of course, he came up with the idea of organizing elections for things to happen. And the young soldiers led by Rawlings said, no, we have to clear you guys before we even do the elections. So he came at the wrong time to a wrong place. So in the end, himself and the former friend he betrayed and all the colleagues in that regime, unfortunately, have to pay with their lives. This was the military. We are not talking about chicken boys here.
In line with the SMC2 exit plan to return the country to constitutional rule, political parties were allowed to campaign with high expectations for ending military rule, as scheduled on 1st July 1979. It was therefore difficult to disregard the popular wish of the people. However, the Rawlings regime persuaded the political parties and their leaders to agree to a 3-month delay for what they called house cleaning exercise, an event that would lead to the execution of some generals, including General Acheampong. For the AFRC, this exercise needed to be carried out before they hand over to a civilian rule. The AFRC ordered for the arrest of 3 former heads of state, General Acheampong, General Ignatius Kutu and General Frederick Akofo. Meanwhile, assets of 53 individuals, including retired military officers and prominent businessmen, were ordered frozen, and military courts were set to try alleged crimes against the states.
Yes, I met Acheampong one day whilst I was at the Air Force Base guard room. They had just brought him in, I don't know where from, but they were taking him to the office of the commanding officer, who was then no captain, no guy. So I dashed out of the guard room and called him, Jacoboski, how are you? He saw me, he was excited. And he said, what are you doing here? When did you come back? I said, I've been back for some time. He said, you see what has happened? You see, all he said is, you see the foolish thing that Kufu had done? Now we are all going to be killed. That is what he said. And then he moved away. And I never saw him again until I heard he had been killed at Betrayal.
A platoon of soldiers was sent to Hidib to bring Gen.Acheampong to Accra. His nephew JK was a boy then. He narrates how the general was picked.
4:35 and amuka miensa ane practical ba na Madam Fosi one general e won bedroom osro to omotoa no esro no omko nti Madam kra na okokro no nso oni omonko na omonya nhwe nanka papa de nanka obeyi no kakra nti Madam na okokro no no omne no nti yana satam na na papa ni nua oni okuma ba ko friend dapa no wa ha Madam Fosia Mrs. Acheampong ha na ne cousin ba ko na friend ajabili the friend Kofi Atabili no nso wa ha na ye nyina na antikogya no kwan wo ase nti dadinu etra gate into ne bag me kra na ekutame I de kudu am no ase na ya amache amuka na ba ko e paki e kira ba ko paki a akutu da ase pedre na practical ba ko na count satam Niza soni namsana kauna roka nana kutu ayeje nane papa ofifie bedu hasia point hasia bedia Assemblies of God form somebody this year the time do ona ka na tu na mo ka na practical na tu the last one can say menhu akase Acheampong animu nyi de okwe o mabio na last word o kan metie ya nya se me bom sum na aka na kutu na small kan ya na last word.
He arrived in Accra on 13 June 1979. He was sent directly to Burma camp. At Burma camp, the media and national TV were assembled for what was seen like a stage show. The moderator of the media encounter asked Gen.Acheampong the following questions on the following: abuse of power, corruption, womanizing, hiding of stolen funds in Swiss bank accounts.
Yeah, we've also heard those stories, and I mean, surprised that if really such a thing ever existed, when we had to leave into exile, we wouldn't have been having to, like, first of all, being housed in a council flat by the UK government. And also, we all had to do menial jobs to get by. My mother went back to nursing, sold off all she could to get, me and my younger brother back into school. So I mean, if any such money existed, we really, we would have needed it, at that time, and even now, if such a thing existed. So we find it very strange that people still believe, and the people who worked with us in London, and they saw what we all had to go through. So if anything such existed, why would we, go through such hardship? But politics being politics, people bandy stories around, and people tend to believe it. But if there was any such thing, I'm sure you'd have seen by now. Or if you spoke to people who, lived and worked with us, they would have told you that we all had to just go through the middle to do what we had to do to survive.
Also having houses in Switzerland and London. In addition, a prepared script was given to him to read by admitting to all charges, but he refused to read it. Another allegation was he gave Acheampong of Asofo-Dadzie fame $2 million import license.
Let me go by Master to you know what it is. That's nonsense, of course. And these are my people that I trained and I work with all the time. The go by was totally illiterate, didn't know anything about that. And if you're giving an import license, remember this, that those days import license were given to people, especially who wanted to, if the government wanted to import something, then they would let somebody import it privately. So if you got an import license, then you had one big problem. Where do you find the money to go import that thing? So you may get an import license for $100 million, and there's nothing you can do with it. You understand?
Responding to these allegations, Acheampong explained, it's a framed up story. If I had approved $2 million for her, Ms. Boahima couldn't have even paid the city equivalent of any allocation given to her. Perhaps the accusation that was most interesting of all was womanizing. In response, he said, "It is not true that I bought golf cars for my numerous girlfriends. I do not deny that I had girlfriends. All of us have girlfriends, even you. Which of you flirt with only your wives? We all do it. And to me, I do not see how girlfriends contributed to the ruin of Ghana's economy. No one can claim to be a paragon of virtue. We all do it." The AFRC needed the occasion to seek public blessings for its intentions. Surprisingly, no evidence was produced at the media encounter against Acheampong. It was a ghost trial. In his final comment at what was sadly a ghost trial, he confessed being too lenient, kind-hearted, generous, and believed these personal traits of his created all the wrong impressions about him. He also wished Jerry Rawlings well and cautioned him to be careful because those who sang hallelujah would be the same people to sing crucify him. This will be his last public statement. Acheampong was put under arrest as soon as the press conference was over. In the case of Jerry Rawlings, the tribunal's panel members were known. The prosecutor presented the charges and he had lawyers to defend him. Yet he didn't offer Acheampong the same courtesy. The same conditions prevailed in Trinidad and Tobago in 1971, where Acheampong, as a judge, cast the lone vote to block the death penalty for any of the mutineers at the time.
Yes, in fact, at the end of the trial in Trinidad and Tobago, for the death sentence, you have to have unanimity among the panel. And Acheampong was a lone voter against imposing the death penalty. As a result, no one was executed. There were 8 soldiers who were on trial. And in fact, one of them rose to become one of the prominent politicians later in the country. And again, it shows how Acheampong, in all cases, did not want to see anybody hurt, killed. And again, as I say, it's one of the fascinating aspects of his personality. A soldier who never wanted to see blood. That's very interesting.
In what is described by many as a kangaroo court, General Acheampong and his former colleague, Major General Edward Kutu Utuka, supposedly arranged. Utuka was a commander of border guards. The two were charged with corruption and smuggling, respectively. They were convicted and sentenced to death by firing squad. It appeared they were denied the normal tribunal trial. No defense lawyers, judges, and prosecutors were hooded. This was purely another ghost trial. At this point, he knew his time on earth was very limited. But not until he tasted his last meal, and so his dear daughter, Elizabeth Ama-Afra-Acheampong, made him his last meal.
The last time I saw him was June 15th, 1979. And the last word he said to me was to pray for him. And also, he's helped a lot of people, and he's not a bad person. Had I known that was going to be his last meal, I would have prepared one of his favorite food, which is roasted mashed cocoyam with peanut or groundnut mixed with red palm oil.
At exactly 6 a.m. on Saturday, 16 June 1979, the dark day, 3 days after his media trial, he and Utuka were driven to the Teshi shooting range. The driver was Captain Bedu Kumsin. Captain Kumsin was a guard commander for Acheampong during his reign as head of state, and it was Utuka who facilitated his enrollment into the Ghana Army. It was a dark day and a torture for Kumsin to have driven his mentors for execution. When they got there, they were still digging the sticks. Waiting and seeing the sticks being prepared to Kumsin was sheer cruelty and torture of letting the condemned witness the preparations for their execution was too much to bear. Therefore, he drove away to a nearby military academy. He came back with them when preparations were completed. This event will forever haunt him for a long time.
Yeah, it's always going to be a memorable day because that's, the day, my father was untimely taken away from us. So you do remember, you reflect, and you obviously try and make the most of your life. But it is a significant day.
There are schools of thought that believe Acheampong's death was destined to happen because there was a prophecy to that effect.
But then he knew it anyway. I mean, a year before the Kutu government had been trying to convince him to fly out of the country and go into exile in London or America or something. He kept saying to them, I'm going to be dead next year, together with all of you.
The prophecy or whatever they talk, well, there was a letter from Afrifa. There was a letter from Afrifa. I believe that letter will be Professor Ajiman Priya's. He wrote this letter to Acheampong. He said, one day, I fear that they might line all of us up and just shoot us. Okay. Now, something happened. Interesting happened. This one, I'm quoting from a friend of mine who was in the intelligence service. He became my friend in retirement. He used to come and used to sit in the corner there. And he said, Joel, do you know, there was something sort of a party. Acheampong was there. All the members of the SMC, or SMC 1 or 2, what they were all there. And there was a lady who was a prophetess, who was telling Acheampong that your own people, they will betray you. And if you don't take care, you'll be dead. And all the members who were there, they said, oh, no, there'll be nothing like that. And so they all scattered. And the lady told Acheampong, on this particular date, don't go to work. Acheampong forgot. And as he was coming down from upstairs to come and wear his boots, he has dressed up. He was then his domestic, one of the domestics said, oh sir, today is the day that the woman said you should not go to work. He said, I forgot. So he threw the boots aside. In the meantime, this small boy had come to Burma camp. And he was shouting, I want to see it. And this is why Acheampong is not there. Only the wife is there. All right. Then he said, tell him today he shouldn't leave his house. If he leaves his house, he will never come here again. And the soldiers thought that he was on drugs. So they were chasing him. They said, I haven't spoken with you. I haven't spoken with you. God has sent me. So the boy went away. As Acheampong threw his boots away, there was a phone call. I won't mention the name. They said, officer. Just say that I'm so sick. He took the boots and washed the boots. And when he went there, the inevitable happened. And he never came to his house. So if there was a prophecy, yes, there was a prophecy. If it was a fulfillment of the prophet, yes, the prophecy was fulfilled.
The hour had finally come. The moment of truth and reality was too close like never before. Death was knocking and calling for General Ignatius Kutu, and he knew he had to respond.
Well, I'm working, in my freedom. I cannot easily bear it. I cannot easily bear it. But one thing was that he never spoke. All this time that they brought him to the church, I was saying the prayers and all that. He never spoke. So I don't know how himself was feeling, but I should think that he was thinking deeply. I should think that, to say the least.
Nothing else mattered except to find salvation for his soul, and only one man will prepare him towards his final journey of no return. Reverend Father Major Matthias D. Kumisi will be the last man to speak to him. It is an experience he will never forget.
Again, at midnight, I got a call. Do not ask who is speaking. Tomorrow, these were the words of the speaker. You know, they were these words. Tomorrow, some people are going to face firing squad. Get ready to prepare them. It is military law that if somebody is going to be officially, if you like, condemned to death by the army, you have to give him the chance to see his chaplain. So I should get there. So I sat in the hall there until about 5:30 a.m. A whole lot of soldiers came, were surrounded the building. You know, when you are entering Burma camp from Labadi Gate, do you know that side? Labadi Gate, from the other side, 3 first and then you enter there, the RC church was there on your right. So they surrounded it, and then they were marching him. I was in the church, inside the church. They were marching him in there. So I got out and met the soldiers at the entrance, and then they should release him. Then he and Otuka, sorry. Then I got them to the altar. I prayed over them. I tried to tell them, console themselves, and take it that is how God planned it for them. So I couldn't do anything. After having stayed there for about an hour, praying for them and trying to console them, even though it's difficult, very difficult, to a person from death. Person you are talking with like this.
Finally, it was time to ask him one last important question. His final wish. He took his ring off and gave it to the father and said, quote, "Father, take this ring Pray for me that God may accept me as I am, unquote.
He took his ring, and this was his last word. Father, take this ring. Pray for me that God may accept me as I am. This was his last word. This is what it is. Take this ring. Then when he gave it to me, I asked, should I send it to your wife? He said, no, Father, take this ring. Pray for me that God may accept me as I am. This is how he made his hand. And I led into the stake. And the soldier started crying. And I lifted and left before the firing. I left. So this message. And this ring, honestly, I couldn't keep it. I couldn't. I went and on the mass altar, we say mass. And thank the whole under the altar and buried the ring there. I couldn't keep it. Because it would have been giving me two tragic memories. So I buried it under on the altar.
With these last words, the father left and Acheampong stood straight against the sticks, as if he was saying, I am ready. The next thing was the voice of the people chanting, let the blood flow, let the blood flow. Momentarily, an order was given and the bullet was rained on him and Utica.
I think it was on a Saturday. I was in Form 1 in Achimota, and we had inspection on that day. And normally with inspection, we had to scrub and clean. And I think I was so busy, I even missed going for breakfast, trying to get my scrubbing and all that done. And I think when they all returned back from that, it was all sort of people were huddling up in groups, talking to each other, and all that stuff. And also I noticed that my seniors, two particular ones, I remember them, Kelly Gajapo and Christian, they're extremely nice to me, wanted to make sure if I'd eaten and everything was okay. Then it wasn't soon after that my mother's bodyguard, Anachu, drove to the school and picked me up and took me to my auntie's house in Blink Bay. And I think lots of family members had all gathered there. And I think they got me and my younger brother Isaac, and we all gathered around us. They poured some schnapps or drinks and sort of gave it to Isaac and I to drink. And they said, like, from now onwards, if your father calls, you don't go because he's a ghost, and he's dead. And apparently the story goes that he may want to come back again, or people can, because he died an untimely death, spirits could be wandering and all that. So I think this was their way of saying, he's actually dead, and don't go if you see anything similar trying to call you. That's all. So I think that's how they brought the news to Isaac and I.
I was in Labone in my house at Accra. One of my friends called me around about 6 o'clock to break the news to me. And about 30 minutes later, about 6:30, one of the media men that I used to know also called me to break the news to me. He was at the execution site.
Well, that happened. That was the first killing that took place under the I was very, very sad. I didn't think they were going to kill. I didn't think they were going to carry out any killings. I thought probably they would subject them to a lot of questions to find out what went wrong. And this to me only shows that the Jerry's government lost control of themselves and things went out of hand. There was no need to have killed this.
Where there was a cynical. Ahead of the execution of Acheampong was executed with Utica. Kutu and the rest were executed. There were 2 executions also. Perhaps I would have died Because when I heard of the execution, I started driving towards Ghana. I didn't know what I was going to do because my blood was boiling. Then I met Wachijan at the survey department junction, lands department traffic light. I knew him, so I stopped. I stopped him. If I remember very well, the words I used, what is all this nonsense about executing people? Don't you know that tomorrow they will call you a murderer? And he was shocked into existence. He said, oh sir, but this is the list, we're going to announce more executions. And I think he entered the vehicle, turned around, went back. That was the end of the executions.
Well, when Africa was brought into the prison cell, they brought him straight to my floor. In fact, he came into my room at Sawam, and he said to me, Senior, this thing that has happened, you noted, we shall all be killed the way they killed Kutu and Acheampong. So he noted. And not quite a few days later, he and the other members, Amedume, John Boachi, and the rest who were in the rooms next to me, were taken to the Teshwet and killed.
10 days later, the AFRC rounded up the remaining heads of state, General Fred Akofo, General Acheampong, and 4 other members of the military were executed on 26 June at 9 a.m.
They brought the body to the Sawam prisons after they had killed them. And then the most senior inmate, prisoner, called Owo, the man's name was Owo, which means death. He came and knocked on my door that morning. I opened and said, General, they've killed them. I said, who do you mean? He said, they've killed all the officers that left you the other night. I said, really? He said, come and see them. So I walked down with him into the compound, and you could see the 7 bodies being whitewashed. They were whitewashing. I have a story to tell. Honestly, they were whitewashing them. So that I wept and then just came upstairs.
After Acheampong's execution, the AFRC denied James Osei Kutu even the courtesy of seeing the body of his son. Within the next few years, it will be tougher on the family. Finally, the sad memories of losing his dear son broke him. He began to ask himself many questions: why he didn't stop his son from joining the army, and also wondered why the army treated their own in that manner. Eventually, he lost faith in humanity and life and died on 1st November 1981. The pain didn't end there. One of Acheampong's sons, Daniel, also out of trauma and depression, ended up in a mental institution.
And in particular, like my older brother Daniel, I think he had it the worst. And now that I look at it back, because he was the one who had to break the news to my grandfather, and I remember, and Daniel was very boisterous and adventurous and everything, you know. But also I've looked at my father's other colleagues who also killed, and it seemed to be a common trait that, you know, their eldest sons took it badly, you know. And I think I was probably a little bit pushing because, like, you know, because I know Daniel had it quite rough, you know, and it took a bit of a toll on him. Thank God now he's doing well. Before, but I think, yeah, he took it quite badly.
In spite of all this pain, the AFRC instructed for Acheampong and the bodies of the other generals to be buried in an unmarked grave at a cemetery at Isawo medium security prisons in Eastern Region. But the prison warden, Opin Emmanuel Jimbibi, refused. Rather, he buried them at Adroji Cemetery, also in the Eastern Region. He did so because of the suspicion that the soldiers might return to destroy the bodies. According to an eyewitness, this is where Acheampong was buried. Presently, it has been sold to a private developer who has also built a wall around it for his garden. Finally, after 20 years of waiting, the Rawlings regime and its National Democratic Congress lost elections to the NPP under the leadership of President Gen.Acheampong. As a selfless leader, he directed the appropriate institutions to recover and prepare the remains of the 8 officers to be handed over to the families for reburial. President Kutu also restored posthumously to Acheampong his full military status and rank. The bodies were handed over to the families on 27 December 2001 at the military chapel at Burma camp. Acheampong was later sent to Hwidim for reburial. He was buried close to his father at his residence at Hwidim. In life, they were separated, but in death, they have reunited. What would a son say to his father, and what would a father say to his son?
I don't know what happens in the afterlife, but from what I can tell, I know that the deep, deep affection they had for each other, and I can't imagine anything other than joy. I think they'll both be proud of each other. That I can tell for sure.
Well, what will Daddy, for instance, say to the old boy when he sees him? How will he go about it?
I wouldn't know, but I know there'll probably be a joke to break the ice, because they both had a wicked sense of humor, and I'm sure it would probably be a joke first, and admiration, and whatever, transgression would have all been forgiven on both sides.
After 40 years of waiting, it was time for the families of these officers to bring closure to the many long years of trauma. And so, with the approval of Ghana Armed Forces, a public memorial and Thanksgiving service was held at the St. Catherine Catholic Church at Burma camp on 26 June 2019. The event attracted thousands of people, including Chief Justice, Chief of Staff at the Presidency, and Speaker of Ghana's Parliament. Also present was Lieutenant General Obed Akwa, Chief of Defense Staff of Ghana Armed Forces, and its entire senior commanders. The 1979 incident was formally acknowledged by the Ghana Armed Forces as an aberration, and respect was finally accorded General Ignatius Kutu Acheampong and others. A man who never spilled blood, he gave it all, kind at heart, humble by nature, was finally recognized. Even in his pain, he still thought of his loved ones. With all that being said and done, if truly there is life after death, then the souls of General Ignatius Kutu Acheampong and his colleagues are at peace at last.
No, I have not overcome the pain. It's gotten easier, but I will never forget this pain.
I think you deal with closure progressively. You deal with it all the time. It's never going to go away, but you just learn how to handle it and make the most, what situations you have, and importantly, try and do things that would be a credit to my father, and you just manage, as you go along, and yes, you'll never get complete closure, but you just manage things as you go along.
In his book, Gen.Acheampong, Life and Times of Ghana's Head of State, Professor Bafwa Jumwendua stated, quote, equally important, the leadership of Acheampong, as well as other military rulers, including Rawlings, helped the ultimate resolve Ghanaians to rewrite their political narratives and beat to a condition of undefined and unregulated political leadership. Hence, the life and times of Ignatius Kutu Acheampong ought to be celebrated as part of the narratives for the democratic resilience of Ghana's Fourth Republic that emerged in January 1993, unquote.
I'm a real thoroughbred democracy believer, even though today I have some reservations about the way we have adopted democracy. I think we didn't do a good job by indigenizing democracy. But nonetheless, I've never supported coup. What I say in the conclusion to the book is simple. That whereas no coup d'etat can be tenable, we also have to recognize the fact that perhaps it has been through these multiple coups we have had as a country that has now taught us a lesson to commit completely to democracy today. The fact that the Fourth Republic has survived 30 years and hopefully it will go forever, that fact could be attributed to the collective wisdom that we have gained from our past history of coup d'etats. So in that respect, despite our abhorrence of coup d'etat, there has been a silver lining for us as a people. And that silver lining has been our collective commitment to uphold this Fourth Republic and not to lose it before we get to the Sixth Republic. So that's where I stand.
After all was said and done, who really was Acheampong?
He was a God-fearing person, a good man. When I say a good man, I mean you should look at the totality of the man's life. Okay, the totality of the man's life is equal to good or bad. Because if they say X plus Y is equal to 10, X means something, Y means something. And if the answer is equal to good, then you know that the X and the minuses and the pluses, if you add all together, is equal to good. That is Acheampong for you.
Very remarkable man, extremely big, generous and big-hearted, very forgiving, and with incredible foresight and vision. And we hope he spread that among his sort of generation that follow on. We may all have picked different bits of it, spread across the rest of the family.
There's a lot of controversy, I know, and obviously I'm not going to know the truth. I wasn't around, but the fact that he tried to move things forward at the time when things were rough, and just the overall goal of his was to improve his country, his nation. I think that doesn't need to be forgotten. And I just think there's some programs, from what I understand, that are still, there's the impact of them, the positive impact of what he started is still being felt today. I think that's something that needs to be looked at and considered when thinking about his legacy.
A great man, probably the second best president of this country after Kwame Nkrumah. I would say that Kutu will be the number 3.
I think in the final analysis, Acheampong comes across as a Ghanaian who loved his country, who genuinely wanted to change his country for the better, and who was committed through the kinds of visions he had to make Ghana a better place. Because if you look at his industrialization policies, the indigenizing the local economy, if you look at how he was able to stand up against the IMF and the other international monetary institutions, the fact that he was the only government, or his was the only government that never borrowed a penny from anywhere, from Nkrumah till today, he is the only leader who never borrowed. The fact that he put the weight of the state behind indigenous entrepreneurs, hoping that they will become the centers of development in their various industries for the nation. If you look at all these kind of initiatives, not to mention Operation Feed Yourself and the other things that he did, then you cannot help but admire this person in terms of his vision for the country. But of course, in every situation, you are bound to have some contradictions. Okay? The fact is that human beings by our very nature, we love freedom. Anyway, we love freedom. So any political system that seeks to suppress that freedom is going to have a reaction. And that reaction, historically proven, is it could be explosive. And that's what happened. So despite the goodness that I see in him, the political system that he supervised was anti-human in that respect. In terms of having a government that did not have the participation of the people, a government where people didn't have a choice of who ruled them. In other words, a government that was undemocratic naturally will suffer the consequences that his government suffered. And that again is history. So it depends on how you see him. And I see him in these two ways. One, a legitimate leader who really wanted to see good things in his country, but who at the same time was fighting against the tide of history.
Children of trouble will give their final message.
The idea about the Kutu-Acheampong Foundation, I think it was a discussions I had with my siblings, especially my oldest sister Elizabeth, and we thought that because normally we try and shy away from politics or anything that's, but then also we thought it would be sad if we couldn't really tell the legacy of my father and continue his work in other forms. So I think we discussed and we thought the foundation would be a good idea. And the idea about the foundation was the proceeds from the book that was launched will go into the setting up of the foundation, and basically we will do projects and charitable causes that he would have liked and supported. So I think one of the first projects that we funded was the leprosarium, which is run by Father Campbell the Wager. So we did a couple of donations from the book sales, so that And interesting also, the link with Father Campbell was quite strong, because he's been very supportive of us. When we did the 35th anniversary of the senior officers that were killed, it was him who administered the service for us, and he's been very supportive of us. And interestingly, when my father was first overthrown in '78 and taken to his first detention center in Oshafort, Father Campbell was one of the first people to visit him and pray with him. So the leprosarium idea of supporting Father Campbell actually was something that my father would have approved.
Even though Gen.Acheampong looks like his father, some call him his father's lookalike, or sometimes even his twin. Does he have any political plans?
Never. No, because I think you've got to know yourself. Yes, but also I think you need certain characteristics to be a modern day politician, and I don't see myself with any of those, or wanting to. There's so many ways you can contribute by not being at the forefront. You can be in the background and still help your country in many ways. That's what I intend to do.
Rest well, soldier, and march on to glory.